What's up, everybody? Troy Cartwright here. Hey, we had a ton of interest in our meetup for 10-Year Town here in Nashville. So if you want to make sure you're aware of the details for that, join our community at 10yeartown.com. And also just wanted to give you guys a quick update. We are hard at work at finishing up and editing our Q&A episode, and hope to have that to you guys here soon. Thanks. Today's guest is publisher Tim Hunze. Tim Hunze is over at Big Machine, and full disclosure, he is also my publisher. I can attest firsthand to how great he is at his job and how much it has changed my life. If you are a young songwriter trying to get started, this episode is going to give you so much value about what a publisher is looking for, how to be a great songwriter for your publisher. But without further ado, Tim Hunze. Well, I always start this thing off with the same question, which is...
Are we live? Is this going?
Yeah, we're going.
Okay.
Which is, how long have you been in town, Tim Hunze?
Longer than most of your guests, I think.
Okay.
I moved here in 1988.
Okay.
That was a long time ago.
What is that, 35?
Oh, God, I don't do math. So, yeah, something like that. Long time.
35
I came
years.
down, when I moved down in 88, I was going to MTSU, but I lived in Nashville, drove up to Murfreesboro. At the time, that didn't seem like that big a hassle. It was a freaking hassle. 24 was a nightmare.
Even then?
Even then, dude. It's always been a show.
Yeah.
Shit show. Went 2 years to MTSU and graduated, interned at Sony Records. It was just changing from CBS Records to Sony. And
Oh, wow.
then...
Did they buy it, sell it? Like,
yeah,
how did that...
I forget. I just remember shredding a bunch of the old letterhead. That was one of my intern jobs.
Really?
So we stuffed envelopes. What I did then, I worked in publicity. And
Okay.
when an album or a CD was released, you had to do mailers. And that was my job as the intern. I had to do the mailers. And so I would stuff the CD, the bio, the headshot, and for like 500 pieces to all the, tastemakers so they would get it. So
Yeah. Wow.
yeah, there you go.
What did you study at MTSU?
Oh, recording industry management, bro.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is that like the music? Is that the music business degree? Okay.
Mass comms technically
I see.
it's mass comm with an emphasis in recording industry management.
Okay. What other internships did you?
That was it, man.
That was
I
it?
just did one. I transferred over. I came in as a junior,
Okay.
and so I just had the time for one. But that's funny enough. It turned out I became really good friends with my intern supervisor, Cheryl Lindsay. Shout out to Cheryl. And she's the one that ultimately got me my job in a tape room at a little company called Great Cumberland Music Group, which started my journey. That was in 1993 when I got my first official job in the music business.
Yeah.
In a tape room of Great Cumberland Music Group. Had no idea what publishing was, but 30 years later, I think I figured it out.
Yeah.
As much as I'm going to figure it out, I still don't know what I'm doing.
Yeah. Yeah. 30 years in, you probably know a little bit.
I know a lot of what not to do, Troy. That's what I've learned. A lot of what not to do.
Yeah. Well, that's half the battle, right?
That's most the battle. Because if I ever figure it out, I might be rich. But I am not there yet.
Being in the tape room, like what did that, was that literally like listening to demos? Was it like sorting demos and songs? Like what did that job look like?
Well, back in my day, son, they were finishing transferring most of their songs over to DAT tape.
Yep.
So I did a lot of transfers, even
Okay.
from some reel to reel, which most of the kids probably don't even know what that is. But yeah, I did everything. I actually came in and it was kind of a mess. The company had been, Bill Ham had a partnership with Jimmy Bowen, and Bill bought out Jimmy. So there was me, a receptionist, and one creative. And the tape room was a bit of a mess at the time.
Mm-hmm.
So my job was to organize it. So I remember putting all their pitch, which were paper. They had them in binders, all the pitches that they'd made, and I put it into an Excel spreadsheet. And they were like stunned that you could do that. I'm like, yeah, man, let me show you how to organize this shit, bro. And then they actually had all the demos were done on Rolodex cards. And so you would flip through it to find, you'd look it up by title and then find out where it was in the archives and go pull it out.
So would somebody say like, hey, I want to pitch this song to so-and-so artist, and like, how would you do it?
They would hand me a piece of paper with the songs that they wanted on a cassette tape, because this was cassette tape days, and I would go pull the songs and record them on the cassette tape, make the J card, label the cassette, and then hand it to them. So it was all real time. So there was no last minute pitching, because it was all like if you had 15 minutes worth of songs on there, you had to wait for my ass for 15 minutes to get it done for you.
Oh, I see. It literally took the time because you had to like
real time.
Yeah.
Start, stop, start, stop.
Wow.
And sometimes you'd clip it. If you clipped it, they'd make you do it again. It was a process.
Yeah.
It took me a minute. I figured it out.
Yeah.
But yeah, and then they would, a lot of times you were the delivery guy. I was the Uber of the tape. So they'd be like,
Yeah.
all right, take this over to the studio and then just put it in this car or go see so-and-so. But you would walk into sessions. Like I would be sent over to go, Tony Brown be cutting George Strait over at Soundstage, and you'd run over the last minute pitch and I would run in, and sometimes you get to go back. Sometimes you just drop it off and whatever.
So sometimes would you like go back and like?
I wouldn't play it because
Okay.
I was just the delivery boy.
Gotcha.
So yeah, I would just hand it to him.
Wow.
Be like, oh, you're Tony Brown. Awesome.
That's crazy.
Or Mark Wright or... on occasion, fun story. I remember one. They're like, they give you the most random. Like, there was no Google Maps, by the way, no GPS. So they're like, it's this house, and you go down. It's a third one on the left. Just stop in the back, and you know, Music Row was pretty much everything was on the 16, 17, 18.
Yeah.
So you drive down, and one time I pulled in the back, and I opened the back door, and I'm going in. They told me go in the back door, and da-da-da. And I realized I'm walking in, and I walked into a kitchen, and there was somebody wasn't there, but somebody was cooking breakfast, and I realized this is someone's house. So I slowly backed out and shut the door. I was in the wrong place.
No way.
Yeah, totally.
You just walked into someone's
Just walked
house.
into somebody's house. Yeah. True stories. This is what tape guys did back in my day.
Yeah. Wow. That's crazy.
Always good times.
Yeah. I feel like even now you will put like an address in my calendar, and I will go there to write, and I've maybe not written there before. And there is always this like bit of anxiety before you go in, especially if you don't have somebody's number.
Yeah.
You're like, this is someone's house. I hope I'm like at the right house right now.
Have you gone to the wrong house before?
I don't think I now you just call.
You have such a good publisher that never happens, right?
That's right. That's right. You've never led me astray.
Well, I hopefully don't put the wrong address in there, but it's going to happen. You'll walk into the wrong place sometime.
Yeah.
It never fails.
Yeah. Well, yeah, like today I showed up to Warner Chapel and I didn't have it right, but that wasn't your fault.
Thanks, Brad.
Yeah, thanks, Brad.
Little throwback to Brad there.
Well, I'll go forward a little bit, but I want to go back first. So before you went to MTSU, where did you like grow up, and how did you like develop a passion for?
I don't want to go too far, but I was born in Florida. All my elementary years, I grew up in Birmingham, Alabama, but we moved to Knoxville eventually. That's where my dad was born and raised, Knoxville, Tennessee. And my mom was big on music. She was probably where I got my love of music. She listened to whatever current radio was and would buy lots of 45s. When we walked through the Sears and Roebuck, she'd be like, oh, this looks popular. Let's buy this. So we did a lot of that. But being on the music, when I got there, I tried guitar in Birmingham. It just never connected with me. I don't get the whole string thing. But I remember going to Hughley's Music Shop in Knoxville, Tennessee, for anybody that used to be in Knoxville. And they had a trumpet and a snare drum. That was all they had left to rent and give lessons on. I'm like, well, I'm going snare drum. Who wants to play the trumpet? So that was the beginning of the end. My mom didn't know that was going to be a passion. And so from the age of about 13, that was all I ever wanted to do. So
Was play drums.
I was going to be a rock star.
Yeah.
At 55, still that dream has not come to pass yet, but I still have a drum set I practice on. So if anybody needs a 55-year-old drummer, let me know. We're in. But that was what began my music business career. I was always going to be a player.
Yeah.
Up until I got a job in a tape room, got married, had a kid, and was like, oh, this music business side seems pretty cool.
Yeah. Little bit more stable.
Little
Loosely.
Not a ton.
I know.
We can get into my story. It's been nothing but change. But
yeah.
I mean, the reality is for me, like I learned early on, even when I was playing in bands in the basement, I was the guy that's like, well, I'm tired of just playing to these four walls. What do we do? And I don't know, our first gig, I got us booked at some bar in Knoxville. I was like, I don't know, 16, 17, and a guy let us play for beer, and we were terrible. We knew like 5 songs. My singer would forget the lyrics. It was terrible. It was metal, we did covers and whatnot. But I always was that guy that kind of figured out the next step. So I always was kind of the band manager, and I got a really good band and a cover band that we made money. Like that paid for a lot of my bills in college at UT. I was a house band at the library on the Strip. Most people know where that is. And we used to play all the weekends, all the frat parties. But I figured that out too. You go meet all the social directors. You start to become buddies, and they pay good money, man.
Yeah.
For cover bands. So I did a lot of that.
And that was kind of your foray into the business side of the music industry.
Well, the bigger one, I jumped off, like, I couldn't get a job. When I graduated in 90, it was a rough time in the business, so I didn't get a job right out of the way. But what led me to move here was I moved here with an artist. A friend of mine had graduated a couple of years ahead of me. And he's like, I'm moving to Nashville. And that's where I found out about MTSU, the whole program. But I'll keep this short. But I moved down here to continue working with him because there was a producer that wanted to work with him. And when I got out of college, he was still trying to figure it out. And I said, dude, I know how to do this. I might be slightly cocky. And I was like, all I need is money, man. And we could put your own music out. You're great.
Yeah.
Well, he found somebody with money. So we started a record label.
Wow.
And we did the whole thing, came down here and recorded. I'd moved back to Knoxville at this time to work with him and start this label. And we put out a single. It charted very lowly on Billboard.
Uh-huh.
I mean, this is like three guys. Like, there was three people out of Knoxville, Tennessee, and we got a video on BET. He was an R&B singer, and we had a lot of action, but we didn't have distribution. There was no digital distribution. Learned a very valuable lesson in the music business. You have to be able to sell your product.
Yeah.
And that didn't happen. And
how did it chart? Like, how did that work?
I was the radio promotions guy.
So you would just call.
Okay, it might get long. I'm a storyteller, but like in that day, again, there was no internet really. So I went down to the library and you get the standard rates and data books, which came out regularly. And I looked up all the radio stations of pop and R&B, made a database, and we made and mailed out, because I worked in the label and I knew how they did it. We mailed out promos of his record, and with a flyer and a whole thing, and we mailed it to all the radio stations, and then we called them all.
Really?
Yeah, literally sat there. Three of us just called all the radio stations across the country, and just talked to them. And same thing with BET. I just kept wearing this guy out, and finally he just acquiesced and said, "Look, I'll put it on this Smash and Trash thing, dude. I really like you, but I don't think the video's that great, but I'll do it just to get you off my back."
Yeah.
And he did, and it kept winning for about a month.
Really?
Yeah, it's pretty cool.
Was that like a head-to-head thing? They'd play a video and say,
I'm playing
call in which one's better.
Yeah. I forget the actual name of it. I mean, this was like 1990, I guess, something like that. It's been a while. But
that's hustle, though, man.
I mean, so there you go.
Awesome.
Like, I don't take no for an answer, man. I'm just going to go after it. So that's what made me kind of good for being a plugger.
Yeah.
Sense. No, you tell me no, I'm going to come at you harder.
Yeah,
like, really? What do you mean no? Let me try that again. But listen to it again. It's really a good song.
Yeah, if you listen harder, I think you're going to hear that this is a good song.
Yeah.
All right, so you're doing drums, you're kind of managing bands, you're hustling.
Yeah.
How did you like kind of get your first role as like I guess a plugger? Is that the way you prefer to be identified?
Yeah, I still call myself a plugger. If people ask what you do, and we were just called song pluggers back then, which I still don't know the history of that. I just know that's what we were called, because you're just out plugging songs all day long, right? Well, I sat in the tape room, kind of figured it out. Like, these guys, I'm like, oh, so they listen to songs, they find their favorites, and then they go play it for their friends. I'm like, this is like high school. Like, it's just awesome. What a perfect job for me.
Yeah.
But I started because I was archiving everything, and I kind of picked up on what they were doing. I would start making copies of songs I liked and take them to people I thought might work. And there was one that this girl at the time worked for a guy named James Stroud, who was a big producer back in the day at Giant Records. And I dropped a tape off to her, and she listened to it, and they called to put it on hold. And I remember all the pluggers were like, who sent this song over? And I was like, oh, man, I dropped that off. And they're like, you did? And they're like, yeah, I just thought it would be good. And it was put on hold for a kid that at the time was named Clay Walker, and it ended up being a single, and it went to 14, and I did that out of the tape room. They did kind of say, maybe ask for permission for next time, but you can work the catalog, but you have to do your own job for a while, but hey, like, keep going, go do it. So I kind of just kind of do things. So got a little bit of hot water, but not really.
Yeah, I mean, it's always easier to get forgiveness than permission, right?
Yeah. But I lived in the tape room for about 5 years before I got up to be a full-time creative director with my own little office and all that stuff.
Same company?
Yeah.
Okay.
The Great Cumberland was part of Hamstein. A lot of people remember that name from the 90s and early 2000s. And Bill Ham owned it, who managed, published, produced ZZ Top. Being a Texas boy, you probably know Bill Ham. And he was great. Somewhere around 98, 99, he sold that to a company called Mosaic. And then Mosaic sold to Stage 3. Then Stage 3 sold to BMG. And then I ended up without a job, started Parallel.
Okay.
And then
Yeah.
that's the short. Well, Parallel went to Anthem, Olay Anthem. And then I came over to Big Machine. So there's 30 years real fast.
That was very fast.
But I've been bought and sold a lot.
Yeah.
Not always fun.
Yeah. So on the publishing side in Nashville, right? There's a lot of like, I don't know if a lot is the right word. There's a few independent publishers, right? Were there more in the 90s? Like, were there more companies? Like, because on the label side right now, it's like incredibly concentrated, right? There's like your 3 majors and then what, 3 or 4 other, I guess, would you even call them independent labels? I guess that's the technical term.
Well, Big Machine would be an indie, and BMG I'd call an indie, and Black River still technically an indie. So there's a few. But, I mean, to put it in perspective, I remember the last time I remember counting, there were like 12 labels and hundreds of artists. And, you know, some of those were like Capitol would have Liberty and EMI, so they would have little imprints underneath them, or Decca and Columbia and Sony were all kind of the same major company, but there were so many and so many A&Rs. So to answer your question, yes, there was at the time of my early days, multiple small indie companies.
Yeah.
And then came the big mergers and acquisition period, because what happened in they would all kind of sell here and there, as you could tell, and they would change hands. But when BMG really came back, the new one, they bought up so many of the what I'd call mid-size indie publishers. Because by that time, we'd gone from Mosaic to Stage 3. We had offices in L.A., New York, the U.K., and then there was Windswept and Chrysalis and Cherry Lane and Evergreen. They bought up a bunch all in about 2 years. But the way you have to look at it is usually this happens in cycles where they come and they buy all the success up, you know, these small ones that are doing well. Not all of them, because like Big Yellow Dog's been around for 25 years. Some live, but they'll buy them up, and then it creates fertile ground for new companies to start. And then they prop back up, and then they get bought up, and then they prop back up or disappear. Some, you know, unfortunately, the success rate of indies is not high. But
yeah, so it's hard.
It's worse than probably 90-10. So haven't had one, I know. It's really tough.
Do you feel like the reason it's such a hard business is because it's like it's hard to build catalog, like to just get enough songs to compete, or is it just you run out of money, or like what makes it so hard?
Well, I'll back it up. In the 90s, before we went full digital, 90s into 2000s, it was still hard because, you know, you're small. You're working on a shoestring budget. You're trying to make things, you know, it's not super cheap to do it.
Yeah.
To sign writers, you know, you're going to spend some money. And back then you had to do a lot of demos, and demos were not cheap. But you could get cuts on records. So back then you could float pretty good on cuts. And if you got a single, that was like gravy, right?
Yeah.
So, but you could get a lot of cuts. And if you were on gold and platinum records with cuts, you would see real income. And things were way cheaper back then. Rent, overhead, that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Now it's tough. It's really tough. If you're an indie and you could get a bunch of cuts, but if you don't have singles, you're not covering overhead.
Right.
By the time when I started Parallel, by the time I ended it 6 years later and sold it, our rent had doubled. The cost of hiring people had not quite doubled, but gotten close. Writer deals were pretty similar, but you guys need to live. So, you know, we used to start people off 18, 24, maybe even 30 grand. Now they need 40 to survive, because you can't live in Nashville for under 40 grand. I mean, on a writer salary, but you know what I mean?
Yeah, so, it's expensive out there, man.
To explain it, it's hard. It's really hard if you want to start a full-on independent company that doesn't have anything like a management company, a label, or something attached. It takes a lot of money and a lot of effort.
Yeah.
A lot of them you see that have been very successful are tied to a hit writer. that might have better access. It can speed up some of the writer development, and it's all about access. So if you look around and see the really successful publishing companies, you can draw a line to how that's kind of helped out. Just purely somebody starting a company and becoming successful that's not either attached to a label or other than Big Yellow Dog, that one, but it's been around for 25 years. I always give them a little shout out. They're pretty amazing.
Yeah.
Trying to think. I want to say I'm wrong, but I can't think of one off the top of my head.
Yeah. The ones that come to mind now are like writer driven, right? Or
Big Loud, Smack.
Yep.
Tape Room, which is Gorley. Most of them big machines have been attached to a label. Now, I will say that it is an independent and has had a lot of independent success. So that's been driven by Mike Molinar and Alex, and now Michelle Attardi and me, and Lizzie and TC. But the beginning of that, really, the success was really driven off what they've gotten outside the label. But it did help that they had a label.
Yeah, sure. That makes sense.
Yeah. With Brett Young and some of the other acts they've had.
Yeah,
Justin Moore.
They're doing all right.
They do okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think where I want to go. I think that there's a lot of questions that people have about publishing.
Bring it on, man. Like, what do you want to know? There's no secrets.
I think, like, I played a show at the listening room on Saturday, which I know you were there, but afterwards, I had a couple young writers come up to me and say that they listened to the podcast or whatever. And, you can tell that they're like, you just get a sense, I guess, of like, maybe they want some advice or some help or something. And it's like, I don't have any great advice to give other than like, keep going. One of the guys was like, had just graduated from Belmont and was like 23. And I was like, dude, just keep going. Like that's my best advice that I could give you. But as a publisher, like what are you looking for? What makes somebody stand out?
Wow, that's between that and how do I get to you to play, or how do I make it? Those are the big questions. Man, it's tough. For every person that you would ask that's a publisher that sits in the seat and you ask them that question, it might be a little different. It's like, it's got to just be, I can hear through, like, my favorite part of what I've done is discovering undeveloped talent, like finding somebody that I like, those first writer deals, and you find that rough diamond, right? And how do you know? I sum it up this way, and I stole this from my old boss, Jeff Carlton, and I asked him that question one time. He goes, I just think they got something to say, and I want to work with them. And you can tell when somebody has something to say. They have a story. It's tied together in some cool melodies, because everybody's a little different. Some people are more lyrically heavy. Some people, I remember hearing Caitlin Smith the first time, and she had something to say, but melodically and vocally, I was like, who is this?
Yeah.
This is like amazing. And sometimes now it can just be a complete stop. Maybe it's a producer writer, and you're like, well, they are bringing something I hadn't heard to the table. I like whatever that is. So it's kind of multifaceted. But you just know I know people hate it, but it's your gut, man. I've lived off my gut my entire career, and you just go, I'm betting on this horse. I believe in this horse.
Yeah.
Sorry to compare songwriters to horses, but
that's okay. We don't mind.
No, it's I just want to put my money down on that.
Yeah, but it is just it's hard to articulate, but it is like it's a feeling.
Yeah.
And sometimes you're wrong.
Oof.
A
lot.
I mean, that happens to me on that, on the songwriting side as well. You're like, I don't know if this person got it, and then they got it.
Yeah. And sometimes you grow into it, man.
Yeah.
You take a bet, and on the publishing side, like you said, you just keep going. Like, I've given a lot of writers an opportunity early, and they had success in it, but it wasn't in the contract I had with them. It was afterwards, and that's fine too, man, because I want to be a part of someone's story. I want to be a part of that. So anybody that's coming in, you just got to trust yourself. And there's so many ways, like especially now, to get your music to somebody, whether it is through social media, or if you can sing and you drop stuff out to the DSPs, or you do write-arounds, which is the old school way, which still works. If you're good and you find ways to get your music out, get it access, it'll rise. The good stuff always rises, and people will discover you. It does take work. You know, you got to keep doing it and do the grind that we all have to do, but eventually somebody will notice it and go, that's different. Whether it starts off, you're doing ride-arounds. Well, I don't know all the places anymore, but you're out and it's people in the audience recognizing another writer comes up, goes, dude, I like what you do. I want to write with you. Well, write with those people. Figure it out. Find your crew. You know this part of it is like, I think of a couple of, having listened to your podcast, a lot of writers say, you got to find your people. Mm-hmm. You'll find your people. And when you attach to that, the success comes in a big chunk. Like then this person might get a deal, and then all of a sudden all the ships start rising, and that's really cool. Everybody kind of comes in their own class periods, right?
Yeah.
So
yeah, absolutely.
Got to find your people, but it's just find out ways to get discovered, man. Find out ways to get your songs in front of the right people.
Yeah. Is that sort of like finding your class, finding your people? Like, is that sort of true in the publisher world as too? Like, did you start out with a bunch of young, hungry publishers that, you know what I mean?
Yeah, of course, man. You find like I joked, a lot of people might know, some may not. John Mabe was one of mine. Like he was in the tape room at EMI, and we had like the tape guy union, man. We all kind of came up. Fun fact, Ashley Gorley was my part-time tape guy and intern. And then
Really?
He went on to be, he worked it for us at Hamstein for a couple semesters. Man. I always tell people, he was grinding then. He'd go to school, come do his internship, and then he'd be like, hey man, can I write in the office after work? And I'm like, sure, yeah, man, go ahead. So the guy was nonstop back then.
Yeah.
But you do find your crew. I mean, mine always seem to attach to the guys like Mike Molinar and Rusty Gaston. Then it's been about Kent Earls, pretty much anybody that's kind of running stuff now. We all kind of came up together.
Really?
We still laugh like, how in the world are people letting us run these companies, So Chris Lacey, she's one of my longer friends. So
Yeah.
I feel like I'm name dropping, but you asked. But these are kind of,
I'm asking.
That's kind of my class. There's probably some names I'm forgetting, but we all kind of rolled up together.
Me and Ben were working on something like a couple weeks ago, and we did have this moment where I just looked at him and started laughing. I was like, dude, I can't believe like they're letting us do this. Like this sounds great, and I'm proud of it, but like I don't really know what I'm doing.
Yeah. Well, I think a lot of us have that imposter syndrome. I always joke that somebody's going to pull the curtain back and look behind the curtain at Oz and go,
Yeah.
I mean, you just get, I don't know, man. I will never take out, I don't necessarily believe in luck. I'm more of a divine kind of human and believe that divine intervention comes into play. But whatever you want to define that is, you just got to keep at it, and one of those acorns is going to grow, man. And you just got to line up enough of those acorns that grow to keep a career going.
Yeah, keep stuff in the pipeline, right?
Which there's no magic to it. There's really not.
Just hard work.
If anybody says, and there are people that have, I think, stronger guts than others that have just really lined up stuff that you're like, wow, that is freaking impressive, man.
Yeah.
One that I've always, Nate Lowry used to work, Corn Man was a part of Mosaic. We started that with Brett James when I was there, and Nate has just found so much young talent that has gone on to be successful and given them opportunities. It just, he signed Caitlin. We kind of introduced him to Caitlin. Missy Roberts was the one that actually brought her into the company, but to give her nod. But they signed her over there. She went on to do really well. They've had Josh Miller. He's got Will Bundy popping and Lydia Schultz. He just always finds little nuggets of things that go on to do really well. And, finding people like that have a good gut is tough.
Yeah.
Consistently.
Well, I think that's, I don't know, that's something that I see over and over again. It's like developing your taste, right? And trying to find the stuff that you believe in. So as a writer, you can invest in it just with your time, right? I mean, that is like the number one key to success is like if you find something that you think is good, just try and stay as close to it as you can, try and keep working on it. And that, it doesn't always pay off in the way that you think it will. Mm-mm. A lot of times it pays off in a way that you didn't expect, but it often does pay off.
And it usually doesn't pay off in the timeline you think it's going to pay off in. It's a slow business, man. There's nothing like slow business. But, I guess if I had any other advice that popped in my head while we're talking is like, it's so important to hear this part is like, as a writer, you don't have to be an artist, but each writer has a unique voice, right? And you've got to find that thing that makes you unique and trust it. Whether it's like the way you bring in hooks or your ideas or your melodic sense or whatever that is, trust it. Because the number of times I've heard, well, I want to write songs like, I don't know, Dallas Davidson or Rhett Akins or Shane McAnally. Be you, man. Those guys were unique to themselves. And before Shane was anybody, he was just trying to figure it out, man. You probably heard his story. He's had quite a story, but him and Josh Osborne and Brandy Clark and Jesse Joe Dillon and they were writing together years and years and years ago when no one cared. And they found again, it goes back to class, but they found a thing that made them unique, each one of them, but they worked well together too. So, you just got to find your voice, trust in that, and it'll show through. And that comes to that authenticity. You can tell when the songs have a thread of authenticity to them, and just tell your story, man. Trust it. It's really hard to do. We always imitate before we create. That's another quote I always heard from Jeff. He might have stole it from somebody else too, but you're going to do that. You're going to learn the basics. You're going to get it down, but then find out a way to make it unique to yourself.
Yeah.
Which is important.
You have to like lean into that thing that makes you. I found that, we've been having a little success recently, and it does feel like it's just sort of like continuously being like, if I do it this way, nobody else is going to do it this way today. No one else is writing a song like this today. Maybe it's a little left to center, but like people like it.
Validates you.
It does.
Well, and then when it starts happening and you get that validation, which could start from your publisher going, I don't know what this is, but I dig this. Just keep doing that. I like that. And then it's got to catch on. And over time, in order to change the world, you got to take some big swings, man. And I applaud people that aren't scared to do that. It's not easy to do.
Yeah, it can be scary to go your own way,
Because look, the harsh reality of what we do is there's a lot of publishers and a lot of writers in town, and we're all shooting for the same slots.
Yeah.
And your music's going to get played in front of those same gatekeepers, whether it's the artist, the manager, the agent, the producer, whoever it is that you're playing it for. What are you doing to make your stuff stand out and be unique amongst them?
Yeah.
So go try to do that. Take the big swing.
Yeah. You want to take a little trip down memory lane?
Oh, okay.
Do you remember like your first number one that you pitched?
I've been asked that and I don't.
What is like a...
You think I would? That's the dumbest thing. And this is going to sound really weird. I've been a part of a lot of success, but to say the one that I pitched that went on, because in my day, again, everybody kind of like, it was a group effort.
Yeah.
Right? Mm-hmm. So it's the first one I do remember my first cut, and it was a single, went to 14, was Bury the Shovel that Allison Jones heard. Why I remember that? Because I took it happened.
Yeah.
Is there one that I can remember? I don't know, man. There's some in there.
What are like, what are a couple like high watermarks along the way that stick out to you?
When Bobby Pinson started to connect, Bobby and he came through my desk, I'd call it. That's the way it worked. Like somebody dropped off his CD. I took it to the team in Hamstein, and we all believed. And so we offered him a deal. But he and I worked together for 10 years.
Wow.
Maybe a little longer than that. I forget, 10, 11, somewhere in that frame. And when it just started kicking, because he and I, when you're a young plugger and you've signed something you believe in and you're just going for it, and he and I you'd sit in the office drinking beers, talking about we're going to take over the world, this is going to work, and then it happens.
Yeah.
And to get on those stages to get their first awards is just the most magical moment. And for a publisher to see them have that achievement. And Bob was one of my first, Lee Miller, I didn't sign him, but Lee Miller and Monty Criswell and I were all like young bucks coming up in the business, and Jeff signed those guys, but I was very active in their careers. And man, watching those guys go on to have so much success has been amazing, and to still have relationships with those guys and be a part of it. So those are those are really the highlights. Getting on a stage with them, being at their first #1 parties,
That's so cool.
One of the big highlights for me is at Parallel. One of our first big #1s was Kelsey Ballerini's "Love Me Like You Mean It." That was written with her, so it wasn't like it was pitched, but it was her first, the label's first, Lance Carpenter's first, the first Forrest Whitehead producer. It was the first. It was such a magical #1 party, and believe it or not, that I'd been part of many before then. It was one of the first ones my mom came to.
Oh,
and,
that's cool.
At the time, she was sick. She had cancer, and so I was like, "Mom, you should come." And I don't, I'll be honest. At the time, I didn't know how much longer she's gonna be around, but it was really neat. That was the first time my mom, and I've been in the business for a long time, went, "Oh, this is what you do." I'm like, "Well, don't do parties all the time, but yes, this is." She goes, "I get it," because so many people were so sweet to her and came in up. She goes, "You know a lot of people." I'm like, "Yeah, it's kind of my job."
Yeah,
but it was pretty neat.
That's awesome.
So I remember those little moments. Blake Chaffin, when he got his first BMI award for his Brantley Gilbert, which was written with Bobby Pinson. I put those guys together.
Wow.
So things like that are what I remember.
Yeah, you remember the people.
Yeah.
And seeing them succeed.
I'll remember ours when somebody asks me.
Yep.
It'll happen.
Oh,
It's
yeah.
coming.
I believe.
Me too, buddy. Belief. If you want to know what's a success, is believing.
That's right.
Yeah. Got to
you have
impose
to-
your will on people.
You got to put it in your mind and then go make it come true, right?
Amen.
Yeah.
Just keep going, man.
Yeah. You've been in the business for a long time. It's changed a lot. Are you like feel whatever, from where I sit, it feels like we're like turning a new corner, and it's actually like changing like very positively. It feels like maybe it's changing quickly, like in a good way, just in terms of like publishing and it being like more wide open and songs getting to more people and stuff. Like, are you is a leading question, but like, are you like optimistic about the future of publishing and song copyrights, etc.?
Well, okay, you're asking a lot of questions in there. But here's what I'll say. My answer to that is I am excited to be at this part of the history of where we're at. I see positive changes of the value of copyrights. Is it where it needs to be? No, but there's some positive changes there. In the business specific to what we do here in Nashville, I see more people leaning into songs again, outside songs.
Yeah.
I see more opportunity in that. I have always pitched songs. Again, like, my Big Machine and the companies I've been a part of have been built on pitching songs. You never stop. I can promise you the song that never gets cut is the one that's never been pitched. So I've always had that ethic. Always, always, always. And every company I've worked at and been a part of, that's the ethic of the company. So, any young people in the business side that are out there, I know it's hard. I get it, but you're never going to get the cut if you don't go and hustle. And so do that. But seeing that open up is great. I'm excited by the music. I think we're very broad. I think there's room for growth. There's definitely some divisive things right now, right, left, whatever. I'm not going to get into too much of that, but there's a lot of interesting things. But it's really exciting to see this. I've never been a part of the industry where you can see, we used to be the gatekeepers. The music business was the gatekeepers. We were the tastemakers. We were the ones that brought the music to the people and go, here, you're going to like this. We think it's pretty cool, and shared it with the world. But now it's almost in reverse because anybody can put anything. There's a lot of noises, we know, but there's so much music out there, and you see stuff bubble up. And so we're not the complete gatekeepers anymore, but we still have to identify like, okay, we think we can take that and help that move along the line a little bit. And so it's interesting to see this new dynamic where the artist is getting a little more, I don't want to use the word power, but a little better position to now negotiate and create a better life for themselves going forward.
Yeah.
And I think that's cool as shit because it's definitely been the other side for so long.
Well, it feels like it used to be like the funnel was this way. So you had to get in at the bottom and they could push you out to the masses, right? Now it seems like it's operating in reverse. It's flowing this way, but there's a ton at the top, right? Anybody can put out a song. Anybody can make a song. Anybody can go viral, right? I mean, that's fun. And then it's just moving its way down, and you can see it now with even with agents and publishers and like stuff like that. It's like people are getting, there's a lot to watch now, but people are getting excited about stuff that they're seeing already work and go, oh, I wonder how I can build on that or amplify that. And it's moving that way, which I think is like really exciting from an artistic perspective, right? Because there's less guessing, oh, we need it to stick to this narrow formula to succeed. Right now, you know, you can prove your own version of, you know, you can make your own meal.
Yeah.
You know, with whatever ingredients you want. And then, you know, in a lot of cases you're getting to see in real time. It's like, oh, okay, people want to eat that. So I think like artistically, like it's a lot more fun now because you don't have to fit into like this narrow tranche of,
dude, what kills me
music.
is the amount of talent, you know, with the advent of all the social medias, you know, Instagram Reels, TikTok, all the things.
Yeah.
You can see and find the most amazingly talented people. There's limitless amounts of talent. Now, it does require, you know, somebody, you know, I don't want to pit this like, you know, the evil empire and the artists and whatnot, but you're still going to need a lot to go from where you're at to superstardom if that's your goal. To be a superstar requires a lot, a big team, a lot of rails,
a lot of help,
a lot of access. And, but it is just so cool to see what you're speaking of, where you can find something and it's already kind of found itself. Because probably the hardest thing in artist development is to help somebody when you find something really raw, which this town's been known. You could just be so green and have no idea what you're doing, but you have the talent and people can see that. What unfortunately happens sometimes is you get signed in, people start spending money, and you haven't quite figured it out yet. Mm-hmm. And then you've amassed some debt, and then you end up, you know.
I've never seen that play.
You never
before.
seen that play? Well, no. Well, dude, it happens all the time. So you know what I'm saying, right? You know, that's, I don't want to say that's unfortunate, but that's what happens. But now you have the opportunity to kind of do, if you're really wanting to be an artist, I'm talking more artist-specific conversation here. But if you want to do that, you can get out there and create it. You can find what works instantly. You put it out, you go, oh, they didn't like that. Oh, but they like this. Mm-hmm. And then you kind of have your voice. I guess that's what I'm trying to say. Like, what excites me is seeing that people are going to get to a certain level of understanding who they are quicker. Quicker is probably the wrong word, but through the reinforcement of their streaming, their live touring. And so by the time a label or people that see it, the gatekeepers that can help pick that up and take you to that next level, you know who you are. And they do too, which is also important. They go, oh, I get that. I know what to do with that. Yep. And it saves everybody a lot of money and probably pain because...
Well, it does. It's actually, it's harder than you think to tell people who you are. Because a lot of times you don't even know yourself, or you grow and you change as you go on, and that can be painful.
Well,
right?
How did you like it when somebody looks at you and goes, man, I think we need a hit. You go write us a hit, Troy.
Yeah. You're like,
what does that mean?
Well, then you're just gripping the steering wheel tight. Like, that's not always the best way to steer, right?
And I thought I wrote that already. What do you mean?
Yeah, it's like, what about these 200 songs? Are there no hits in there? And like, you know, I think what someone is really saying when they're saying that is it's like, we need a no-brainer that everybody can get behind and push all the way through. And that is, a lot of stars have to align for that to occur. And like, you know, that's all right.
To put in perspective for any artist that's out there, you're going to face this when you get signed, even as a writer, right? When you get signed and maybe things aren't really taking off as fast. But what I think people mean when they say that, and you know, you might have been in your deal a minute, you thought you turned into some hits, but what you need is something to excite the building first and foremost. And the building being your label, your partners, you know, who's are involved, your manager, who's involved. They just want something that gets people engaged at their level first, that they can take and then get the other people engaged. It's not always meaning, wow, we need that radio hit. But yeah, eventually it'll be that. But it's always the fresh baked cookies. Everybody likes the fresh baked cookies, and it's challenging. That's where it's really tough being you guys. Like, I am glad to be on my side of the fence because I'm the one that looks at it and go, man, maybe we need another song. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, I like the fresh baked cookie analogy though, because that's good, because everybody can smell it too, but they cool off pretty fast. So you gotta.
They can get hard, man.
Yeah,
you know.
gotta.
But I still believe in old songs, so don't think songs get dusty. But you got to find the one that gets you moving down the road. And we all know what that. And being your own label now, that's challenging too.
Yeah.
Now you just beat yourself up. How do those conversations go?
Insomnia. That's the main. That's the main
Staring
byproduct.
Up the ceiling. Oh God, what's next?
The 6 a.m. wake up of like, oh no, I have to do this again. I gotta string all this together again.
Yeah,
but it's all right. It's going good so far. So, all right, Tim, thank you for being here, brother.
That's all you needed from me?
That's all I needed.
You're pretty easy, man.
I appreciate you, buddy.
I didn't sound like an idiot.
No, not at all.
Hopefully this has been helpful to some people.
Oh, dude, it's been great. That's it. That's the pod. See you later. Thanks, everybody, for listening. Keep rating, keep reviewing, keep subscribing. We love you. Talk to you soon. Bye.